Welcome to another part of the semester exam review questions. This one will cover 58 through 70. Hopefully none of you are this mean. Please study a little bit every night. You don't need to cram for hours. If you would just study 15 to 30 minutes a night, you'll do great on the test. Please come in with any questions or concerns, because honestly, we all make mistakes, and I could have made a mistake doing this too quickly. So good luck. Hope this helps. Okay, now we are on number 58. It says a sign at the fair advertised ticket prices for the carnival games. Find the unit rate price for each. Remember we talked to you about unit rate means for one. So if I buy 50 tickets for $37.50, so we will need to find what the value of one would be. So we're going to divide this by 50. So 50 can't go into 37, so we are going to put 0 here and bring that decimal up. So then I'm looking 50 into 375. So that'll go in there 7 times, which will give me 350. With 25 left over, bring down my 0, and then 50 will go into 250, 75. So for red tickets, I have 75 cents. Next, we have blue tickets. So same thing, we're going to do 20 tickets divided by $16 to figure out how much one ticket would cost. So 20, once again, can't go into 16, but so we're going to put that 0. 20 goes into 160 80 times. So that's 160. Bring your 0 down. And then 20 goes into 0. So that's 80 cents for blue tickets. And then yellow tickets would be 5 tickets for $5, which you can tell is $1. Now on to question B. How much would 40 red tickets cost? Well, if we know what one ticket costs, we can simply do 40 times the 75 cents. So we get 0 and 20, placeholder 0 and 28, and we add those. We get 30, or 3,000, but then we have 2 decimal places, which gives us 30. So this would be $30. And then it says how many blue tickets would buy for $20. So we know that one ticket costs 80 cents. So we could say 80 cents divided into $20 to figure out how many tickets we could buy. So remember, when you're dividing by decimal, we move that decimal twice, and we're going to move this decimal twice as well. So now it's out here. So 80 can't go into 20, so we're going to do 80 into 200, which would be twice. So that makes 160 with 40 left over. And then 80 into 400 would be 25. So I could do 25 tickets. 59. 1 inch is about 2 5/10 centimeters. If a dog is 14 inches tall, what is the approximate height in centimeters? Okay, so I would set this up as a proportion, or you could just simply multiply, but I just like using proportions. Proportions are my favorite. Okay, so 1 inch is 2.5 centimeters, so I'm trying to get to 14 inches, so I would need to multiply by 14 to figure this out. So 14 times 2 5/10. So I get 20, carry that 2, you get 7, add a 0, 8, 2, 0, 5, 1, and then we have 1 decimal place. So he would be 35 centimeters. Okay, sneakers are normally $85, but are discounted to $51. What percent of decrease? So remember, when we're doing percent of decrease, percent of increase, percent of discount, percent of markup, we're using the formula change over original. So we have to figure out how much is the difference between 85 and 51, and that would be 34. So I would have 34 over the original price of 85. And what I'm seeing most of you, and then to find the percent, you could either set it equal to 100 and scale up and scale down, but most of you are going straight into dividing, so I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Remember, your numerator goes on the inside. Add a decimal since 85 will not go into 34. We're going to add that decimal. and then 85 into 340. We're going to say that goes in there 4 times, which will actually give you 340. Okay, and then to find your percent, so this is a decimal. Remember, to find that percent, we have to move this decimal twice, put a 0 in the blank. So it would be 40% of a decrease. Question 61. Carlos purchased an antique chair at a garage sale for $15. He later sold the chair for $27. What was the percent of increase? So once again, this is a percent of increase. So we're doing that change over the original. So the change, it went from 15 to 27. That's a $12 increase. The original price was $15. This one, I'm actually going to go ahead and scale it down. 3 will go into both of these, so this will be 4/5. And then just to get to 100, to make it out of a percent, times that by 20. So just so you see, I divided this by 3. That's where these numbers are coming from. And then multiply this by 20. So 80 out of 100 would be an exact 80%. So he increased his profit by 80%. 62. I think I've worked this out in most of my classes, but let's go over it again anyways. The total bill for drinks and pizza for the 3 people will be $14.90 before tax. So A says the sales tax is 5%. What will the amount added to the bill be? So they're just wanting to know, what would the tax be? So remember, we talked about that 5% is the decimal 500. So we are going to multiply 14.90 by the 500ths. So I'm just going to get a 0, 45, carry your 4, 24, carry your 2, 7. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers behind the decimal. So I need 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers behind the decimal. But we have to remember that money only has 2 decimal places. So we need to look at the 5 to say, what does that do to the 4? Well, it'll round it up. So this will be actually 75 cents. Will be your answer for the tax. Next, they have a tip for 15% that they're leaving. So they're wanting us to calculate the tip. So then I would do $14.90 times 1,500. Same thing, I'm changing that 15% into a decimal. So you're going to get the same thing that we multiplied on the other problem, so I'm just going to write that down. Then you need a placeholder, 1 times 0, 1 times 9, 1 times 4, and 1 times 1. We're going to add all that together. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4 places behind the decimal again. So, but once again, we have 3 things. This 5 tells me to round that up. So this is going to be $2.24 for the tip. Next, it wants to know how much would each person pay. Oh, I'm running out of room. Oh, no. Okay, so for each person, we have to think, I have to add the tax and the tip to my total for them to figure out how much each person would pay. So that would be with the tax, and then we're going to add the tip on. By the way, if you haven't noticed, this is a really cheap dinner. Okay, so we got $17.89, and we said there are 3 people. Okay, so I'm going to make room real quick I need some space to work because I'm running out of room. So I'm going to cover this part up. Okay, so here we go. So now we have 3 people divided by the 17.89. So 3 goes into 17 5 times. I'm going to have to write small. So that'll be 15. Bring down my 2. It'll go in there 9 times. Don't forget to bring that decimal up. Sometimes we get busy with our math and completely forget about the decimal, which will give me 27. And then it'll go in 19 6 times, which gives me 18. And then we got to add a 0, bring it down, which is 10, which will go in there 3 times. So really I have, put another square on here. Okay, so really what I have is 5 and 90, 900, and we're going to stop there because we're talking about money. So we're having to round. So we need to look at this 3. And the 3 tells me to round the 6 or leave it alone. not to round it down because you're not lowering it. We're going to leave it alone. So I have $5.96. And someone asked me in one of the classes, they're like, but that's not $17.89. So 2 people are going to pay $5.96 and 1 person's going to have to pay $5.97 to cover the entire cost. I know this was a long problem. I hope you understand. If you have any questions, let me know. I'll be more than happy to explain it again. Okay, so now we're going to do this problem. Looking at this problem, it's pretty tricky. The graph you have to be very careful with. If you wrote down what we wrote down in class, that's fine. I'm going to explain this a different way. Below is a graph showing the total cost, including the bus fare and the comics, for her to go to the comic shop. So you have to think, if the first question is, what is the round trip bus fare? So if I'm looking at this, just for the bus fare would be for 0 comics. It looks like it's about $2.50 for one way. So if I have $2.50 for one way, I would have to add $2.50 to go for round trip, means there and back. So that would be $5. Okay. How much does a comic book cost at the comic book store? So if the bus fare is $2.50 and we look at 1 is at 4. So the way I look at this is, okay, I have the bus fare plus the comic equals the $4. But I know the bus fare is $2.50. So plus the comic would be 4. So what could I add there? That would have to be $1.50. So each comic book is $1.50. This next question says, write an equation that shows how much money it costs Angie to buy in comics at the comic book store. So we know it's $1.50 per comic book, so M equals $1.50 for in comic books. And now we have determined the prime factorization of each number using a factor tree, then write the factorization using powers. Please use those powers. Okay, so we're going to start with 88. So for 88, and remember, you may work this out differently, but your prime factorization should still be the same, even if you don't use the same numbers I do. So I'm going to start with 2 and 44. And then I'm going to break this down and know that 11 and 4, and then break down the 4 and have 2 and 2. So if I notice this, I have 1, 2, 3, 2, so that's 2 to the 3rd power, and 111 times 11. Okay, 108. I know 2 can go in here, and that would be 54. And then I know that 6 and 9 can go in here, which would be 3 and 3 on this side, and 2 and 3. Remember, it's multiplying, not adding. So I have 1, 2, 2s, so that's 2 squared. 1, 2 3s, no, 3 3s, sorry, 3 3s times 3 cubed. And remember, we talked about how we can check our answers by actually multiplying this out. So 2 squared is 4, 3 cubed, 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. And then if I multiply 4 times 27, that does give me the 108, so that's correct. So remember, you can always check your prime factorizations. Okay, number 66, it says the equation D equals 44 times T, the distance in miles that Jennifer has covered after traveling 44 miles per hour for T hours. Make a table that shows the distance traveled for every half hour. So this is our time, this is our hours. I'm going to put H for hours, and this is our distance, which is in miles. And I kind of ran out of room, so I'll write it over here. Okay, so for 0, she went 0 miles. So for half an hour, she went 44 in 1 hour. So that means she went 22 in half an hour. And we know 1 hour is 44. Well, if you do 1 hour plus half an hour, that's 66. Plus another half hour is 88. And then another half hour is 110. Then another half hour is 123. No. Sorry, not 123. What am I thinking? 132. I'm switching the numbers up in my head. 132 plus another is 154. This box is so small. And then plus another half hour. So all I'm doing is adding the half hours every time is 176. Okay, you're probably, actually you are going to be able to graph all these. So you're going to have to estimate a little bit on this graph because the numbers don't hit exactly on the corners. So obviously our 0, 0 is here on the corner. And then we have half is at 22, so that's going to be a little lower. So we're going to do this a little bit lower. It's hard to do this on here, I will say that, so I'm apologizing ahead of time. Let me pick a different, maybe that'll work. And then 1 hour is at 44, which is going to be a little less than 55. And then 1.5 is at 66, so that's going to be a little bit in between. And then 2 is at 88, so we're going to be getting closer to that 100 mark. 2.5 is at 110, so we're going to be just above the 110. I'm getting better at this. 3 is at 132, so just above the 125. 3.5 is at 154, so like really close there. And then 4 was at 176, which is like almost on the line. So then you have your line, and it keeps going for however many hours she drove. Now let's take a look at number 67. Which set of fractions is in order from least to greatest? And if I look at all the problems, I see that all the fractions are the same. So I'm looking at 3/8, 5/6, 7/16, and 11/20. Well, the first one that pops out to me is 5/6 because 5/6 is almost a whole. And if that's the greatest, because if I look at the rest, 3/8 is close to half, 7/16 is close to a half, and 11/20 is close to half. And the reason I know this is because I take the denominator and I half it. So 4, 3 is close to that 4, 8, 7 is close to that 8, and 10, 11 is close to that 10. So that allows me to see that 5/6 is the biggest. And since that's the greatest, I can just say, oh, well, B, without calculating the rest. But we can calculate to make sure. So 3/8, I can rewrite that to make it out of 16 by multiplying by 2 and multiply this by 2, which will give me 6/16. So I know now that 3/8 is smaller than 7/16. And then 11/20 is more than half, so I know that 7/16 is smaller than 11/20 because 11/20 is more than half where 7/16 is less than half. So this shows us that B is the only one that actually meets the criteria of least to greatest. Now let's take a look at 68. Tamara is making a large omelet. She needs half a cup of chopped tomatoes. She only has 1/8 of a cup. Measuring cup. How many times should Tamara fill the measuring cup for the tomatoes? So we need to make we need to make a common denominator because a half of a cup and 1/8 of a cup are two different denominators. So we can change this 1/2 into 4/8. And then that would tell me that I would need 4 1/8 to make a half of a cup. So 4 would be the correct answer. So now we are looking at the next question. Which list correctly shows the reciprocals of 2/3, 3/6, 4/12, and 5/20? So remember, when we're talking about reciprocal, a reciprocal is a number that I can multiply by that number to make it 1. So if I think of 2/3, the number I would need to multiply to get 1 would be 3/2, because that would give me 6/6, which equals 1. So in essence, yes, we are flipping, but the point of a reciprocal is to get a value of 1. So for this one, we have 3/2, check, 6/3, check, 12/4, check, and 20/5. So B is the correct answer for reciprocals. These are mixed numbers. These are not reciprocals. Yes, they are the reciprocals simplified into mixed numbers, but it's asking specifically for the reciprocals in this problem. Last question of the review. The recommended daily allowance of fat is 65 grams. 1 serving of oatmeal contains 3 grams of fat. Which proportion can be used to calculate the percent of the daily recommended allowance of fat contained in 1 serving of oatmeal? So we always need to remember we have part over whole equals our percent out of 100. So that's what we're looking for. So in this problem, it says the daily recommended allowance. That would be the whole in this problem. So that would have to be 65. And 3 grams, that would be part of the grams, would equal the percent that we don't know over 100. So now looking at this problem, we can see that A represents the same. It's equivalent to the proportion that we wrote.